The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the wide open land of the western frontier. Tom, a solitary cowboy, rode his horse across the dusty plains. He had lived alone on this land for years, and the vast emptiness around him was all he knew. There were no neighbors for miles, no friends, and no family. It was just him, his horse, and the endless stretches of the rugged land he had claimed as his own. The cowboy was used to being alone. The long days spent working the cattle and the quiet nights under the stars were all he needed. He didn't mind the silence. It was familiar, but sometimes deep in the solitude, he would wonder what it would be like to have someone to share it with, someone who could bring warmth to his cold nights and perhaps help with the work on the ranch. But he had long ago given up on that thought. His heart had been broken once, and it had taken him years to recover. He wasn't sure if he was ready to open it again. That evening, as he rode along the path leading to his cabin, he noticed something unusual. A figure was on the horizon, walking slowly and carefully through the tall grass. At first, he thought it might be a traveler, someone lost or needing help. As he got closer, he saw it was a young woman, alone and seemingly distressed. Tom pulled his horse to a stop, watching her for a moment. The girl appeared to be in trouble. She was limping slightly, and her clothes were dirty, as though she had been walking for hours. She stopped when she saw him and looked up with a mixture of hope and fear in her eyes. Her gaze met his, and he could see the exhaustion on her face. "Are you all right?" Tom asked, his voice rough from years of solitude. The girl nodded, but there was hesitation in her eyes. I'm lost," she said, her voice trembling. "My horse threw me off, and I've been walking for hours. I don't know where I am." Tom's heart softened. He could see the pain in her eyes, the fear of being stranded in such a vast empty land. She looked like she had been through a lot. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll take you back to my cabin. It's not far from here. You can rest, and we'll figure out what to do in the morning." The girl hesitated, clearly unsure whether to trust him, but after a long moment she nodded. She didn't have much of a choice. She was tired, and the land around them was unforgiving. The cowboy was her only chance. She slowly approached him, and he helped her onto his horse. As they rode together, the evening air grew cooler, and the vast open landscape stretched before them. The silence between them was thick, and Tom could feel her unease. He didn't want to press her, so he kept to himself, focusing on the path ahead. The cabin came into view after a while, a small structure made of wood and stone, nestled against a hill. Tom's home, simple and quiet, was a reflection of the life he had chosen. He stopped the horse in front of the cabin and helped the girl dismount. She looked around, taking in her surroundings with a mix of awe and uncertainty. Tom led her inside. The warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth filled the room with a cozy glow. He gestured for her to sit at the small wooden table in the center of the room, while he gathered some food. He wasn't much of a cook, but he had enough to offer: some bread, beans, and dried meat. It wasn't much, but it would do. As she sat, the girl looked around, her eyes scanning the rustic yet comfortable interior of the cabin. There wasn't much to it. Just a few pieces of furniture and a couple of shelves filled with books and supplies. But it was clean and simple, a place to rest after a long day. "Thank you," the girl said quietly, her voice softer now. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." Tom nodded, not quite sure how to respond. He was used to being alone and didn't know how to talk to someone who was clearly going through a hard time. But he didn't want to push her. She needed comfort, not questions. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds in the room being the crackling of the fire and the clink of their utensils. Eventually the girl spoke again. "My name's Emma," she said, her voice still unsure. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I didn't know where to go." Tom glanced at her, noting the way she avoided eye contact. He could tell she was embarrassed, maybe even ashamed of her situation. "It's all right," he said. "You're not causing trouble. You're just a person in need, and I'm here to help." Emma's eyes met his for a brief moment, and he saw something in them, a mixture of gratitude and pain. She had clearly been through a lot, and Tom wondered what had brought her to this point. But he didn't ask. She didn't owe him any explanations. After they finished eating, Emma stood up slowly. She seemed hesitant, unsure of what to do next. Tom watched her, sensing that she needed something more than just food and shelter. She needed a moment of peace, of safety, away from whatever had led her to this place. "You can stay here for the night," Tom said gently. "I'll get you some blankets." Emma nodded silently, grateful but still distant. As Tom left the room to fetch the blankets, he couldn't help but wonder about her story. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why was she out here alone? When he returned, he found her sitting on the edge of the bed, still quiet, lost in her thoughts. He handed her the blankets, but she didn't take them right away. Instead, she just stared at them for a moment as if unsure of how to proceed. "I'll be outside for a bit," Tom said, giving her space. He didn't want to crowd her, and he knew she needed time to gather herself. He stepped out of the cabin, leaving the door slightly ajar so she wouldn't feel completely alone. As he stood outside looking up at the stars, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between him and Emma. There was an unspoken connection, a bond formed in the silence of the night. He had helped her, and in doing so, he had opened a door to something more. He didn't know what it was yet, but he could feel it just beneath the surface. Back inside, Emma sat quietly on the bed, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't used to accepting help, especially from a stranger, but something about Tom made her feel safe. It was strange being here in his cabin alone with him. She wasn't sure what to think of it, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she could finally breathe. And as the night grew deeper and the world outside fell silent, Emma's mind began to calm. She wasn't sure what the morning would bring, but for now she was safe, and that was enough. The night passed quietly, and when Emma woke the next morning, the cabin was bathed in the soft light of dawn. The warmth of the fire still lingered in the air, and the crackling of embers filled the silence. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes and stretching, the soreness in her body reminding her of the long walk and the fall from her horse. The sheets she had been given were warm and comforting, a small relief from the coldness she had felt for so long. Tom was already up, standing outside near the horses. He had spent the morning tending to the animals, as was his usual routine. Emma watched him from the window for a moment, her thoughts running through everything that had happened the night before. She didn't understand why he had been so kind to her, a stranger. He hadn't asked questions, he hadn't pushed her, and he hadn't made her feel uncomfortable. It was as if he truly saw her as a person, not just someone in need of help. Taking a deep breath, she stood up from the bed and walked over to the small wooden table in the corner of the room. She ran her fingers along its surface, letting the wood's smoothness ground her. The cabin was simple, but it felt warm and welcoming. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. As she dressed, Emma thought about her life before she had found herself here. She hadn't meant to be stranded in the middle of nowhere. She had been trying to escape, to find a place where she could be free from the past, from everything that had gone wrong. But in running, she had lost herself. She had always been strong, always tried to be independent, but in doing so, she had isolated herself from everyone around her. It was easier to keep her distance, easier not to trust anyone, but now she couldn't help but feel a connection to this quiet cowboy. She walked outside, shielding her eyes from the bright sun. Tom was tending to the horses, his back turned to her. He didn't notice her at first, and she took the opportunity to study him. There was something different about him. He was tall, with broad shoulders and calloused hands. His face was weathered from years of working under the harsh sun. But his eyes were kind, gentle, and full of understanding. "Morning," Emma said softly, breaking the silence. Tom turned, his face lighting up with a small smile. "Good morning," he replied, tipping his hat. "I was just about to make breakfast. You hungry?" Emma nodded, grateful for the offer. "Yes, thank you." As they sat down to eat, Tom handed her a plate of eggs and beans, simple but filling. They ate in silence for a few moments, the only sound being the clink of their silverware. Emma wasn't sure what to say, but she could feel the warmth between them growing. The tension that had been so thick the night before was slowly dissipating. "I'm sorry," Emma said, suddenly breaking the quiet. "For last night. I know I acted strange." Tom looked up from his plate, his expression softening. "There's no need to apologize. I understand. You've been through a lot, and it's not easy trusting someone, especially when you don't know them." Emma met his gaze, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I've never had anyone show me kindness like this before." Tom's expression grew serious. "Everyone deserves kindness, Emma. No one should ever feel alone. I'm just doing what I can to help." She looked down at her plate, the words stirring something deep inside her. She had always tried to do everything on her own, never asking for help. But in this cowboy's quiet company, she felt a sense of calm, a feeling that she hadn't had in years. Maybe it wasn't too late to start trusting again, to let go of the wall she had built around her heart. After breakfast, they went outside. The day was clear and bright, and the warm sun made the air feel almost too perfect. Tom showed Emma the land surrounding his cabin, the fields where he worked, the hills where he kept his horses, and the nearby river that ran through the valley. As they walked, the conversation flowed easily, and Emma found herself laughing at his stories of life on the ranch. His humor and easygoing nature making her feel more at ease than she had in a long time. It was clear that Tom was a man who had made peace with his solitude. He didn't need anyone, but he wasn't cold. He was someone who had learned to be strong but also kind, and for the first time, Emma saw what it meant to live a life of purpose and simplicity. As the afternoon wore on, Emma felt a pull in her chest. She knew that, despite how safe she felt here, she couldn't stay. She had her own journey to finish, her own road to travel. But she also knew that this cowboy, this quiet, generous man, had changed something in her. She could feel the weight of her past lifting, piece by piece, and though she wasn't sure of the future, she knew she was no longer running. That evening, as the sun began to set, Emma stood near the door of the cabin, looking out over the land. Tom stood beside her, his hand resting casually on the doorframe. They didn't speak, but they didn't need to. The silence between them was comfortable now, not awkward or filled with tension. It was a silence that spoke of understanding. "I should be going," Emma said after a while, her voice steady but soft. Tom turned to her, a look of understanding in his eyes. "I know," he said quietly. "But if you ever need a place to rest or someone to talk to, you know where to find me." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never felt more grateful for anything in her life. She didn't know where her path would take her, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for everything." Tom tipped his hat again, his expression warm but serious. "Take care of yourself, Emma. Don't forget, you've got a friend out here." As Emma walked away from the cabin, she looked back one last time. The cowboy stood at the door watching her go. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and she felt a wave of gratitude and something more. A bond formed in the simplest of moments. And as she walked toward the horizon, Emma knew that the loneliness she had once felt was beginning to fade, replaced by a quiet hope for the future.